Where do place names come from? Most of the Adirondacks hills, ponds, and peaks were named by early European settlers, sometimes a family name, sometimes after what they saw in the landscape. Some were what we now see as racial slurs for the people who live nearby. A grassroots effort to rename those places celebrates a victory. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com. And the Devlin Inn and Suites, Lake Placid, welcoming families, athletes, and groups to the Olympic Village, offering Adirondack mountain views and dog-friendly accommodations. TheDevlinNY.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, May 21st. First up, Governor Kathy Hochul made a visit to the Seneca Nation's Cattaraugus territory south of Buffalo yesterday. It was a first for a sitting governor. She was there to apologize to the Seneca people for the state's role in operating a residential boarding school there for over half a century. She called the policy of taking Native youth from their homes sanctioned ethnic cleansing. The New York Public News Network's Ryan Zunner has this story.
Today, on behalf of the state of New York, I, Governor Kathy Hochul, apologize to the Seneca Nation of Indians and survivors and descendants from all nations who attended the Thomas Indian School.
Governor Kathy Hochul there during her visit to the Seneca Nation's Cattaraugus territory to formally apologize for the state's operation of the Thomas Indian School, which went on for decades until 1957. The boarding residential school was part of the United States' policy of forced assimilation for Native youth to strip them of their culture and identities to, quote, kill the Indian, save the man. Thousands died across the country and in Canada, and many Native students were subjected to physical and mental abuse at the hands of government and religious officials. Seneca Nation President J.C. Seneca, whose father went to the school, says the apology is a step forward in healing for his own people and relations with the state of New York.
For the governor to come and apologize on behalf of the state for what happened here, I think offers the opportunity for us to continue that process of healing. And I think it also shows that this governor has compassion and cares about our people.
Around 200 Seneca Nation citizens turned out for the event, with many either having been survivors of the school or having a family connection. One of those, Leslie Macomber Sr., says his great-grandfather once owned the land where the Thomas Indian School sat. He says when New York State took over the operation of the school from a Christian minister in 1875, the state brought about dark change.
They wanted cultural change. They wanted assimilation. The message, the old narrative was, kill the Indian, save the man, okay? And believe it or not, a lot of that has happened, okay? Because even amongst ourselves, it's hard. We find it hard for ourselves, some of us, to get along.
By the time the state closed the school in 1957, Macomber feels the damage was already done.
They succeeded to a point, okay, but not to a point of, let's say, a type of extinction, But we did lose our way of life. We lost our way of life so everybody else can enjoy theirs.
Younger Senecas like Kenyu Printup understands the impact Thomas had on multiple generations and how new generations play a role in healing.
When we look at Thomas Indian School and the effects that it had, is that it separated our families. It separated our children from their mothers. And so in our traditional way, that was the core of our families. The clans looked to their mothers, their clan mothers, and their aunties and their grandmas for support. So as that changed, we also changed, and now we're coming back around and we're healing. And we're reuniting our families.
Last year, then-President Joe Biden apologized on behalf of the federal government for its operation of hundreds of other Native boarding schools. In his speech, Biden shied away from using terms related to genocide. However, in her apology, Hochul didn't.
It became a place of nightmares, a place some would call a torture chamber, a site of sanctioned ethnic cleansing.
That terminology is important, according to President Seneca.
By the words that she spoke today, it really reached deep into that. Words that are powerful and strong that we recognize, and for her to say that means a lot.
Hochul also met privately with survivors and their family members before the event. In her approved state budget, Hochul is ensuring the history and impacts of boarding schools like Thomas are included in state K-12 curriculum. For the New York Public News Network, I'm Ryan Zunner.
Earlier this year, a group of Tri-Lakes residents asked the federal government to change the name of a local hill that used a racial slur. And over the weekend, they celebrated their victory. As David Escobar reports, the new name will honor one of the region's earliest black settlers.
A pocket of sunshine breaks through the rain just as Richard Brandt steps up to speak. About 60 people are gathered for a renaming ceremony in Vermontville, about 10 miles north of Saranac Lake.
I'd like to welcome you all to this celebration for our newly renamed Murry Hill, which is about 1.5 miles this way.
Brandt is a council member in the town of Franklin. He helped organize the effort to rename a ridge that used to be called Negro Hill.
So striking these racist names from our town's map, it's been long overdue. And what better thing to do than to name it for the black settlers.
The hill took its name from a nearby community of black farmers in the 1800s. One of those families was the Murrays, who were part of a land experiment led by a white abolitionist named Garrett Smith. He gave away parcels of his Adirondack property to freed black New Yorkers so they could qualify to vote in the state. Author Amy Godine has chronicled that history in her book, The Black Woods.
And this is just thrilling to me because it shows the story doesn't end ever with any one project. It continues. It gets richer, it gets bigger, it gets more inclusive. So I'm thrilled by this. It's very exciting.
Godine's work inspired Paul Smith's college professor Kurt Steger to dig deeper into black history in Vermontville. His research began with a nearby stream, once called Negro Brook, which flows through Paul Smith's property. Steger led a successful campaign in 2023 to rename it to John Thomas Brook, after a local black farmer who was a neighbor of the Murrays.
We've got a brook and a hill carrying the names of Adirondackers who should have had their family names on those before instead of their skin color, just like Lion Brook and Norman Ridge, right? We know those. So now we've got John Thomas Brook and Murry Hill.
Changing place names isn't easy. It involves research, community support, and then approval from the U.S. Board on Geographic Names. Steger says renaming the hill helps reject its racist past, and that honoring black settlers like the Murray family challenges the idea that Adirondack history is only white history.
One thing that defines us as Adirondackers is the stories we tell about ourselves and where we've come from. And the story that passed for Adirondack history for too long was just incomplete and not welcoming to anybody but the white settlers.
Many at the ceremony felt the same. Saranac Lake resident Sunita Hallis says the renaming represents more than just a change on a map.
It gives us a sense of America as this diverse and welcoming and neighborly place. But it also gives us great local pride, and we all get to be part of the story.
That story stretches far beyond Vermontville. Tanya and Lauren Jones traveled from out of state to join the ceremony and reconnect with their family's past.
Our great-great-great-grandfather, his name was Edward Weeks, and he was one of the pioneers who came to this area to begin a life.
Weeks eventually moved to Westport, but his sister Phoebe stayed in Vermontville and married Wesley Murray. Their descendants, including the Jones sisters, are still learning how deeply their roots run here. For Lauren Jones, who lives in Washington, D.C., seeing her ancestral land in the Adirondacks has helped her reclaim a piece of her identity.
I anticipated I'd feel connected to the land, not because my ancestors were free, but just because they lived here and they toiled the land here. And so I definitely had that spiritual connection.
Both sisters say they want to keep coming back to the Adirondacks and are considering buying a home in the region. Lauren says that might give her descendants a better understanding of where they came from.
They'll be more welcome here now, and they'll feel more comfortable here now that the name has been changed from the N word, which was very much problematic to even think was ever on a map. And then to be like, wow, that's actually my family member. I'm a descendant of those people that the Murry Hill's named after.
A name on a map might not mean much to most people, especially for a small, remote hill. But for the Jones sisters, the renamed Murry Hill wipes away a racist word and replaces it with a message that they belong in their ancestral home 200 years later. David Escobar, North Country Public Radio in Vermontville.
We have more news all the time on our website, ncpr.org. Music today by Eddie Lawrence of Saranac Lake and Hank Soto of Stony Creek. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.